We got another exciting episode of the Jassy Invest podcast today with my good friend Dr. Jassy Sidhu on all things property and specifically HMOs, whether or not they make sense as an investment, whether you're a beginner or an expert. We're going to be delving into that today and also learn a little bit about Jassy's story because you know what? If there is anything that can be done in the sphere of property, chances are this guy has done it. He's got an absolute deluge of knowledge on that front. We're going to jump straight in momentarily. If you like what you heard today, guys, feel free to search Dr. Jassy Sidhu on the Dentistry Invest podcast. There's plenty more property content where this podcast came from today, if that is your thing. HMOs is something that is a huge black hole in my knowledge, as is property by extension of that. Definitely not my forte. And that's why whenever it comes to anything that's even vaguely smells like property, I get Mr. Jassy Sidhu on the podcast. Dr. Jassy Sidhu, how dare I?
I worked 5 years for that,
I'm sorry. I take that back. I'm sorry. Can we just forget that that happened? Anyway, Dr. Jassy Sidhu, we're here to talk about HMOs. Just high level and just have some fun and just shoot the breeze and learn a little bit
bro.
today, as we always do. HMOs, House of Multiple Occupancy, right, Jassy?
Yeah, that's correct. It has a multiple occupancy. It's basically where you get like a house and you rent the individual rooms out. A bit like we used to do back in the day at university. And you have some kind of shared facilities. It's quite a common kind of like method in property because it cash flows a lot better than if you were to rent the whole house to a single person.
Interesting, and it'll be intriguing to get into the whole cash flow side of things and yields and what have you. But just before we do that, buy to lets, that's the go-to that everybody defaults to, right? But they're not once what they were.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot more challenging now because interest rates are a lot higher, and prices aren't really coming down in relation to that because people that are selling are still looking at what the prices were just after COVID when they went up. So they don't want to reduce the prices, but then with the interest rates being so high, it's hard to make deals stack up. Still there. I mean, we're still buying, but there's probably not as much as there once were. However, on the flip side of that, because less people are buying, you've got a lot less competition for each deal. And so you can pick up some good bargains if you're willing to take the risk.
Do you think it's fair to say that despite what the market's doing, broad strokes, despite what the market's doing, if you really, really, really know your stuff, you can overcome it?
100%. Yeah. So, okay, so the last budget, I'm sure everyone was like, "Oh my God, what have these guys done?" Yeah. One of the big things that they did in terms of the property market was they increased stamp duty up to 5%. And normally, whenever the government kind of push any kind of policy or any change like that, they'll normally give a period to allow people to transition to that. So they normally say, "Look, it's going to start in April next year or the year after, but the change is going to come in." Dude, these guys said it's implemented tomorrow. So if you had purchases going through, your stamp duty charges just went up. Like a friend of mine called me and he's like, bro, he goes, I need to find another 35, 40 grand for the purchase I got going through. And that's not money you can leverage either. That's hard cash, right? So when that happened, everyone was like, oh my God, this is going to kill property. This is going to kill property, blah, blah, blah. But in actual fact, I looked at like, okay, looking at this, a lot of people now are put off by it. So a lot less people are going to go hunting for deals. And the barrier for entry for new incomers into investing in property is now higher because, you're paying an extra 2% on your stamp duty. So I was like, that means that there's less buyers, which means there's less demand to purchase these deals. So I was like, it's probably a good time to go hunting now because no one's going to be looking. And to be fair, we've found one or two deals that we're kind of like sorted out in the last couple of weeks. So I'm hoping everyone else stays scared and I'll clean up.
This is the thing, right? Because I'm convinced, right? It's a little bit, regardless of what the market's doing, it's almost like that just makes the conditions a little bit harder. But what will overcome that every single time is if your pure skill is enough that yes, obviously it's going to affect your margins to a degree, but
Yeah.
it can blow that out of the water, right?
Yeah, it will. It will. I think what a lot of people don't realize is, in actual fact as well, when you're going to get a lot of older landlords now that want to sell because they're like properties getting too intense, you got Section 21, which is going to go with the Renters Reform Act and all that kind of stuff. So it's getting harder to do. So a lot of the private landlords are leaving the market unless are coming into it. So what that means is the amount of private rental stock in the UK is going to slowly diminish a little bit. That's going to push rents up. So long term, your yields should get better. So you're going to be making more cash flow even though rates are higher than they used to be. So it's all relative. I think Warren Buffett said it best. He said, um, said something like, "When people are fearful, be greedy, and when people are greedy, be fearful."
Or buy when there's blood in the streets, even when it's your own as well. Is
100%.
is another one I like. Yeah, but
That's a deep one, bro.
yeah, it's a little dark that one, but yeah. Anyway, moving swiftly on. Moving swiftly on. Okay, HMOs, because that's what we're supposed to talk about today, right? So, is that something that you've got a little bit of experience with HMOs, right? You've done it before.
Yeah, we've got a fair few now, and we continue to buy them. Simply because we like the cash flow it gives. The more cash flow we got, the more we got to invest, and also it kind of protects you when you have interest rate increases. So if you're cash flowing, say £300, £400 a month on a single let, if interest rates come up, you've only got a certain amount of buffer. Whereas if you're on like HMOs and you're cash flowing like 800 to a grand, you've got a bit more of a buffer then. Having said that, when you've got a HMO, you've also got to pay bills. And bills in the last couple of years have been a lot higher than normal. So it's got its positives and negatives, and nothing's immune to the market as well.
Well, I was going to say that there must be cons in there as well.
Yeah.
I'm going to hope, the way with property, it gets a little weird sometimes, and certain things are tax deductible and certain things aren't if it's held in your personal name. The bills are tax deductible, right?
Yeah, yeah,
They
yeah.
are, whether it's in a company or not. It's that.
Yeah, so with that, it's more so if you have it in your personal name, you're not allowed to deduct the interest anymore, like you can in a business. So that's why a lot of people now buy within a special purpose vehicle, which is a limited company.
Right,
Yeah.
understood. Okay, so high level pros is that cash flow tends to be a little bit better. Can we even maybe go into like yields a little bit on that one, like percentages? Because if I'm right, and listen, you know more about property than me, if you're good at buy to let, 6 to 8% yield is a little bit what you might expect on your gross.
Yeah. So yeah, with a single let, obviously down south in London it's less. The more up north you go, it gets higher. You're going to be yielding between probably about 6 to 10%.
Okay.
We typically won't look at a deal unless we're going to be about the 9-10% region. So we make sure we get it a good price. With your HMOs, you realistically your gross yield should be about 13 to 14% because after your management, the bills, the council tax, the void periods as well, it's going to suppress it a little bit. And voids is one that a lot of people don't take into consideration, but your properties aren't going to be rented all the time. They're going to be tenants moving in and out, and with HMOs, you rarely get someone that's going to stay in for years and years. They're normally kind of short periods, so it's like 6, 12, maybe 18 months. So when they go, you're going to have to like spruce the room up a little bit again, replace any damaged furniture, painting, clean the carpets, and then you got a period where it's vacant, and then you got your letting fee to find a new tenant and that kind of stuff. So that's what we're
Understood.
looking.
Understood. And I'm gonna say as well, say you've got like 5 rooms or something along those lines. Well, you have to get 5 people, was in one for each one of those rooms, which mightn't always be the case. There's an extra moving part there.
Yeah, I know. The demand at the moment for HMOs has skyrocketed.
Oh
Yeah,
wow.
yeah,
From the tenant side or
yeah.
from the buyer side or
Yeah,
both?
so whenever you kind of go into any kind of recession or like any like cost of living crisis, people downsize. So people that were once in like a one bed might struggle to kind of like afford all the bills associated with that. So they might then move to say, if I get a room, the bills are covered. That's my fixed cost. It's easy for me to now budget uh in these hard times. So At the moment, when we've got a room available, it's gone within a day or two.
Wow, 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 wow.
And the rents have gone up as well, quite a lot. Yeah.
And just for context, you're based in Birmingham, right? Birmingham area.
Yeah, West Midlands. So, I mean, here now, you're probably getting about 500 a room, 550, 600 if it's en suite.
Gotcha.
And probably a few years ago, that was probably about 400-ish, 430. So within the space of a couple of years, it's really skyrocketed.
I see. And these are not student lets, these are just for anybody really.
Yeah. So we have like a range of tenants like blue collar workers. We've got lots of nurses. We have some doctors, IT consultants. Get a lot of contractors also. If there's like some kind of development and they're coming for 3 months to do a contract, they'll come and stay in the room for 3 months and then they'll go back home.
Gotcha. Have you ever been in a place where you've converted one of your buy-to-lets to HMO?
Whenever we kind of look at a deal and we analyze it, we know exactly what we're going to do with it. So as soon as we purchase it, we will, if we're going to do a HMO, we'll convert it then and there. I've never been in a situation where I've bought something as a single let and then converted it. It's because I mean, getting rid of tenants and all that kind of stuff, it's a nightmare. Yeah, not worth the hassle.
Yes, understood. Well, in that case, maybe what a better question is okay, you bought a property and you're deciding, right, okay, I think this should just be buy to let, I think this should be HMO, or I think this should be maybe something else. What makes you decide what box you're going to put it in, or what bucket you're going to put it in, or where you're going to go with that property?
That's a good question. Um, oh,
Maybe it's a little intuition as much as
no,
anything.
no, yeah, okay. So I'm at a stage now where I can kind of look at a deal and I know within like a minute or two whether it's worthwhile looking at it in more detail. But I've got, yeah, you're right. Right now I've got the intuition. I'll look at it, I'll be like, oh, this would be good at this, or we could do this. But I think when I first started off, I would probably look at a deal and analyze it as a single let, analyze it as a HMO, and then look at the difference to kind of see what works best. And the way I used to do that is I used to work out something called your return on capital employed. And that will kind of tell me how much money I'm making relative to the money that's left in the deal. And I'd usually go with the one that gives me the kind of high percentage.
Understood. Is this, and just out of curiosity, is this all done within SPVs or in your personal name?
So when I first started buying, I've got a couple in in my personal name, but everything now is just all within the different companies that we've got.
Yes, because it makes more sense, right, from a tax burden
100,
perspective.
100%. Yeah. You've got it realistically now, you kind of you're best off doing everything within a company. I think when the first started as well, if you bought a property in a company, the interest rates were a lot higher, because everyone used to buy in their personal name. But now, like the lenders have called in that everyone's going to do in a company, so you get much competitive rates now in SPVs.
Fair enough. Fascinating. Okay, cool. Well, it's good to know this because these are like the little life hacks that save people a lot of time and effort.
Yeah,
Because I guarantee a younger version of Jassy, if he would have known that, well, he probably just would have went and done that in the first place.
yeah. I mean, it's always worthwhile speaking to counter because everyone's
Yeah,
got an individual circumstance, but generally speaking, um, yeah, buying companies if you can.
good point. Good point. Okay, fair enough. And you were telling me we were just catching up off camera as well beforehand, weren't we? Recently, I don't know how much I'm allowed to say here, but we can always cut it. We can cut it out. Jassy, do this with your hands if I should stop talking right now. Oh, okay, okay,
No, I'm just
okay. Oh, we're
joking.
good.
I
Okay.
don't mind sharing. Yeah,
Because
because
you bought a pub recently, it's going to become an HMO, which is kind of what spawned this conversation.
yeah. So I don't mind sharing stories like this because sometimes, like on social media and all this kind of stuff, whether it's buying dental practices or property or whatever it is, sometimes it seems like, oh, everything's like rainbows and sparkles and everything. But the reality is, it's not like that at all. There's a lot that goes on behind scenes that helps you get the kind of results that you get, and no one really sees that. I mean, I've been on this podcast before, so we've spoken about a pub that we bought before. We've actually got planning on that now for a 17-bedroom HMO, so we're starting the build out of that in the next month or so. But we've got another pub that we're buying. So we exchange contracts under auction conditions, which basically means that once you exchange contracts, you have to buy it by the completion date. And the completion date for this one is tomorrow. And we were applying for bridging finance with a lender who I won't name which lender it was, but before we went to him, we sent him photos, internal, external, gave him all the information. It's been rejected for planning in the past. This is the full situation of it. Are you happy to lend on this? They had the business development manager looked at it. They're like, yep, this is something we'll take on. So we went through the process of applying for the bridging finance. They took longer than they should as well. So I asked for 6 weeks for completion. Normally it's 4. On Monday or Tuesday, they turned around and they said, we're not going to lend. So me and my business partner were like, what the? We're supposed to be completing in like 3-4 days, and you've just turned around and said you're not going to lend. Like, what's
Come
going
on,
to happen?
guys. Come
Yeah.
on.
But like we've got a really good broker. He's kind of found like a private bridger who's looked at it and said they'll lend on it. So we've just got the application in for that now. And then we've asked for an extension from the seller solicitor. So basically we've got till next week now to complete. So we've got that extra week. So hopefully we get it all done. But if we don't, then things get complicated. To say
Spills
the
and spills. Yeah, you know what? You know, if someone tells me, if someone makes it out to you that running a business and doing all these things are easy, they're not, man. You got the scars to show for it. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it. Come on.
100%. 100%. Yeah, yeah.
Hell yeah. No, big time, man, big time. But then again, the flip side of that is the kind of the way I like to look at things. It was very hard to remind myself of this sometimes when I'm going through something that's not easy or is really challenging me or pushing me. I like to remind myself, I'm like, James, you're learning lots of lessons that not a lot of people get the opportunity to learn, which will be able
Yeah.
to serve you later. Because you learn these things, because you learned maybe not to collaborate with someone like that again. You know what I mean? And it's
100%. 100%.
it's a
Yeah.
lesson.
Yeah. As long as you learn from it, it's all good. But sometimes opportunities come from it as well. So for example, obviously the original lender that we wanted to work with didn't give us the money, but now we've gone to someone who's potentially going to give us a bridge in 2 weeks on a commercial property. The rates are a little bit higher, but you'd expect that because they know that we're kind of desperate a little bit. But if they pull through, we've now got a lender that can act very, very quickly, which is really useful. So, although it didn't go to plan, if this works out now, it was probably worth it, to be honest with you.
There you go. Exactly. And actually, that's an interesting thing that you just touched on then. How does purchasing an HMO versus a buy-to-let shift around the finance side of things,
Yeah.
apart from what you've just said?
Yeah, so this is bridging finance. Bridging finance is basically short term. So you're going to borrow money for 6, 12, 24 months. And it's normally at a high interest rate. When you're purchasing a buy-to-let or HMO, you'll typically get it on a mortgage, which is more long term. It's going to be spread over like 25, 30 years. There are differences between your buy-to-let and HMO. So you need to make sure that when you speak to your broker, they know which one it is, because you don't want to get a normal mortgage and put it on a HMO or vice versa. It needs to be on the right product. And also bridges are a lot quicker, or supposed to be a lot quicker than a mortgage. A mortgage is going to take you like 8 to 12 weeks. A bridge, they should be able to do it in about 4 weeks.
Gotcha. And in addition to that, I guess I was curious as well. Let's say somebody gets typical finance for a buy-to-let, right? And from what my understanding is, the person who's doing the lending, the creditor, well, they have to know it's for a buy-to-let, right? Or else they get a bit funny about that.
Yeah, of course, they need to know. Yeah, because it needs to be the right product.
And I'm just curious. So let's say, for example, in the example you were talking about before, you buy the property and you know it is a buy-to-let, but you know you're gonna turn it into an HMO. How does that work from the finance side of things? Do you just let them know beforehand and they can switch it across?
Yeah, so if in that case, I would probably if it's an easy conversion, then I would buy it on a HMO product to make sure that the lender knows. Most of the time, they'll be okay with that. If it needs like a lot of work, then you might have to put it on a bridge first and then convert it over to a HMO.
Oh,
Yeah.
and does the bridge work from the point of view that Again, you know way more about property than me, but what I have heard people say before is if you get a buy to let loan, they won't actually let you change the product for the first 2 years or something along those lines. You're locked in for a certain amount of time. Have I got that right?
I think that's when people buy a resi mortgage to live in, and then they want to switch it over.
Right.
That's called a consent to let. There are some lenders that do it after 6 months, actually.
Oh.
Yeah, speak to your broker, but yeah, don't do it too many times because then they'll be like, hang on a second, this guy's take like you're not allowed to do that. If it's like a legitimate reason that, oh, look, my circumstances have changed and now I have to, like, if your parents aren't willing, you have to go back. Something like that, that's fair enough. But yeah, you have to have a legit reason. And they could say no.
Understood.
Yeah.
Do you think HMOs are suitable for beginners in property?
It
Tough
depends
to
on it depends on the person. I don't want to say yes, I don't want to say no because it's quite individual. Like on my third project, I jumped into something quite big. And I wouldn't recommend it to most people, but I did it and it worked. So for the right person, go for it. Um, it depends on your appetite for risk, how much money you're going to put into it, and how you are with stress, because HMOs are more stressful than single lets. And your first one, you're kind of jumping a little bit into the deep end, so it's going to be more stressful than if you went for something easy. I think for most people, I'd probably say start with a flip, buy it, sell it, learn the process of it, see what it's like dealing with builders and whatnot. See if you like it, because if you don't like it, you probably don't want to do it.